Back to the Martys pre-show. I'm your host, Randy Prasad. Right off the bat, we want to thank Brian Crombie being the very special guest host here on the pre-show. Now we're back here interviewing some of the great nominees competing at an illustrious award happening at the beautiful Living Arts Center on Thursday, May 7th. Right now, at this time, speaking of nominees, we have an emerging literary artist here with us at this time who's been in the screenwriting world for over 5 years, and his genre of choice is horror. And we're going to get the 4-1 on that. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Thomas Joseph. Thomas, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You know what? This is amazing. You've been around the game for 5 years, and your focus is horror based on true events in terms of your writing. There's something successfully eerie about that when you think about, wow, you're not only focused on horror, but based on true events. Can you give us an example of some of your literary examples that you've used true life events and encompass that into horror in your works?
In the Grozny Affair, that's the script I've written for the Martys. It's based in Chechnya, in the capital city called Grozny. And I was watching the show on BBC, and there was a news article that talked about how women were being kidnapped in Chechnya and then getting married, and later on being exorcised in a state-run exorcism clinic. And I thought, from a woman's perspective and from a North American audience perspective, that is so wow-like.
Yeah.
Being someone of Indian descent, I tell my friends I got an arranged marriage, and they get really wide-eyed with me. And I thought, wow, what if we were to tell a real story about some of the wrongs that are happening in that part of the world, and it being perceived differently from a cultural perspective. I thought that's a powerful story.
So this is all very much almost documentary based, where we're not looking at horror, the slasher kind of film genres that we see in Hollywood. We're looking at more of the atrocities, the human atrocities around the world in Chechnya. And as an example of horrific events that dealing with your writings.
Right.
What drove you to feel that you need to voice this and express this to the art world, and why is it important to you?
Anytime you tackle the subject of women's rights or war or human rights violations, it's very sensitive and it's dear to everyone. You mentioned documentary. I was inspired by the documentary that I saw, but I wanted to turn it into a screenplay. I wanted to give it real characters. I wanted real character arcs behind them. And I wanted to stay... It can be a little scary at times and intimidating when you're putting a documentary about a real life kind of situation out there, and the president of the country is... all that kind of weighs in heavily on you as an artist. And it distracts from kind of screenwriting and storytelling. So although the vein, the kind of inception of my story was based on a documentary, I wanted to kind of bring it back to storytelling. Horror is a pretty dark subject. It's not something that I'm looking to kind of pursue in the long term. But it is a good genre to have when you're looking to build a portfolio of screenplays. So.
How do you draw the fine line between creativity and exaggeration of the truth in terms of your writing? Because to amplify creativity, there is certain massaging that would occur in true events. How do you maintain the authenticity of the real accounts while maintaining a creative edge?
You have to have a good story, and I was recently at the Toronto Screenwriting Conference, and many of the producers there talked about what do they look for in a good story, and typically it is authentic, it is based on real facts. I think the fine line is really when you bring it down to the human element of it, and every character has an arc, and every person has a way of reacting to atrocities, to challenges, to marriage, to life, to being a parent. Putting these down on paper and building a story out of it takes a little bit of knack and a lot of isolation.
Right. Well, it's funny because I remember I used to do theater as a kid in Toronto, and we used to rent out a small little like an apartment so we can rehearse. And upstairs there was a guy that rented an apartment not to live but just to write all the time. Is there a place that you take your mind, you're taking your creativity to a secluded location where you get the most creative spells possible to write your best work. So where would that place be?
It's usually at 2 in the morning when my son wakes me up. I can't go back to bed.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're going to see you on the red carpet, Thomas Joseph. Congratulations on the nominations, and we'll see you at the Martys. And we'll see you on the red carpet on May 7th for the beautiful Living Arts Center in downtown Mississauga as we celebrate 21 years of art excellence at the 21st Annual Martys. We're going to be back with more right after this. Stay with us.